Today was a really busy Tesla stock news day. I'll go through all of today's Tesla stock news. The markets are up, but Tesla stock is down. It was down almost 4% at one point, but it seems to be coming back now. I think this is because of some of the bad news that I will go through in just a moment. We also got an analyst lowering his Tesla stock price target, but we also do have a few good Tesla stock news stories. A Tesla Megapack catches on fire in Queensland, which is in Australia. It caught fire last night during its commissioning process. It was a minor fire, and the fire was contained within a single Megapack 2.0 module. No other Megapack modules were affected, and the site was promptly disconnected from the grid. So it was only one Megapack, and it was during a commissioning process, so I don't see this as a big deal. Ross Gerber just sold a tiny little bit of Tesla stock. It is still his #1 position. The Indian government says they are in touch with Tesla to consider setting up a manufacturing facility in the country, so that's good news. Tesla has officially launched its extended warranty program in Canada for owners of the Model S, Model 3, Model X, and Model Y. This new extended warranty program was first launched in the US in March, but has now expanded north of the border. We Canadians, we always get everything late here. The fast lane truck tested the upcoming Silverado EV's range. They towed a 6,500-pound trailer, and in the beginning of the trip, the range was at 475 miles. In the end, the electric truck drove 232 miles on a single charge with 15 miles of range remaining. The average energy consumption was 1.1 kilowatt hours per mile. I can't wait for the final Cybertruck specs, then we can compare side to side. Drive Tesla Canada reports that Tesla owners who purchased their hardware for equipped Model S, X, or Y with a referral code are seeing the free trial of FSD beta extended beyond the initial 3-month trial period. What Tesla has done here is, to those that purchased the vehicle with new hardware, it's extending full self-driving beta because it promised 3 months of full self-driving, but actually at first full self-driving did not work on hardware 4, so now they just extended it by a little bit, so they actually get the full 3 months of free full self-driving that was initially promised. Production and delivery report for Q3 is next week. This report usually drops on the second day of the month, which would be Monday, but it has dropped on Sundays forever, so this will be interesting to see what is actually going to happen. James is still at 440,000 with an outside shot at 445,000. He will update his income statement forecast once we have final numbers. Joe Tagmeyer has a Giga Texas update for us. He saw 50 Model Ys and this new Cybertruck. Kia has announced that its new 3-row EV9 electric SUV will start at $55,000 when it goes on sale in the US later this year, and it can go up to 300 miles, but the $55,000 version only gets 223 miles of range. The Lee County Sheriff's Department has announced a Tesla pilot program. There are now 20 Model Ys and Model 3s in the fleet, and the department said the program will maximize cost savings of 50% or more per vehicle annually. This is a big deal. I know it's only 20 vehicles, but we see more and more of this happening everywhere, and it adds up. So the government institutions are actually looking to save some money, and it's an easy sell for Tesla to get these vehicles to them. It's a bit difficult to argue against having a better vehicle and then actually saving money in the long term. There's a cautious note from Deutsche Bank this morning. They cut their Tesla stock price target from $300 to $285, but they still have a buy rating for Tesla stock. Deutsche Bank predicts downside earnings risk for 2024. The analysts also reduced their Q3 2023 estimates to 440,000, 6% down from its previous estimate of 455,000. For the year, we expect Tesla to reiterate its 1.8 million deliveries target, suggesting sequentially improving production run rate as well as deliveries, likely with better cost efficiencies attached and higher margins in Q4 versus Q3. Together with first Cybertruck still scheduled to be delivered in Q4, we believe Tesla's message could be optimistic about next quarter. Looking at 2024, however, we see considerable downside risk to earnings expectations due to a much lower volume outlook than the market believes. On the bright side, with the company not trying to push as much volume, there could potentially be less pricing pressure next year. The investment bank forecasts that Tesla's total deliveries next year will be around 2.1 million units below the market consensus of 2.3 million deliveries. I expect Tesla to do better than that next year. I share my number in my valuation model, which you can access on Patreon by clicking on the link down below. There's an article on Barron's about why Tesla material miss on Q3 deliveries is likely discounted. One reason that was given for that in this article was that Troy's estimate is lower, and perhaps it's implying that his private estimate, which is only available on Patreon, is even lower than the public one. But a lot of Wall Street analysts actually are subscribed to Troy on Patreon. And at least to some extent, it is certainly reasonable to expect that a lot of these lower estimates are already built into the stock price, even though the consensus overall has not really come down yet. But in one of the latest videos, I did share how this one research firm had a public estimate that is still relatively high, but they said that they will basically lower it, but they just haven't done it yet. We got some news from China. Basically, when you buy an EV in China, your taxes are a little bit lower when you buy it, but they are going to reduce the amount of tax that you would not have to pay if you are going to be buying a Model Y Performance or Model S or X, because these vehicles are more expensive. So they are actually reducing that. And the new rules start on January 1st of next year. It was a bit confusing looking at this story at first because it seemed like maybe all EVs would be affected, but because Model 3 versions and Model Y rear-wheel drive and long range, for example, are not really all that expensive, they're actually not affected at all. It's only the really expensive models that will be affected by this change. Taipei Times is reporting that their island will not be able to evaluate the safety of the Tesla Model 3 until next year, as the popular car is out of stock. They actually dispatched secret buyers to purchase cars at random from dealers for testing so that there's no trickery involved. This Ford model got a 5-star rating from NCAP, but when it was tested in the island, it only got a 3-star rating. I really welcome more testing because it just brings more proof that Teslas are incredibly safe. Now, the Tesla Model 3 would be the first electric vehicle undergoing a safety evaluation, and the testing is scheduled to take place during the first quarter next year. But we have had trouble buying the car from dealers as it is currently out of stock, Taipei Times writes. Does this mean that Tesla cannot sell vehicles in the island anymore? I don't think so. It just seems that they just want to test it, while in the meantime, Tesla can continue business as normal. Tesla is working on an upgrade of its gigacasting technology to die cast almost all vehicle underbody parts in one piece, the Shanghai Securities News reported on Wednesday today. Citing unnamed sources close to the automaker, if this is true, this would be huge and good news. The state-owned Chinese newspaper, which based its report after a recent visit to Tesla Shanghai factory, did not say when and where the upgrade will happen. However, Sawyer says that this Reuters report that just came out is wrong. He says, I read the Shanghai Securities News report and it just said Tesla was using rear gigacastings, which they have been doing for a long time there. It said nothing about Giga Shanghai now switching to front gigacastings, nor anything about any other new cost-cutting measure. So what is going on here? We need to get to the original source. So I found CNEV post, which I believe has writers that speak fluent Chinese, and they have a link to the original source, which takes me to this website, which should be the actual original source. And here is the article, and it says Tesla is accelerating innovation in upgrading the integrated die casting technology to version 2.0, die casting almost all complex underbody components of electric vehicles into a whole. So he did specifically mention the underbody. And just to make sure that Google did not give me completely incorrect translation, I went back to CNEV post, where I assume a native Chinese speaker double-checked the translation, and it still says Tesla is accelerating innovation by upgrading its integrated die casting technology to version 2.0, which die casts nearly all of an electric vehicle's complex underbody parts into a single unit. This does not seem to be just the Giga rear casting. And perhaps this is where all of this confusion is coming from. The newspaper's reporter visited Tesla's factory in Shanghai, where the Model Y's rear underbody structure is already being produced using integrated die casting technology for rapid casting, according to the report. So this specifically later says that right now, currently ready, yes, we are doing the rear. But in the beginning of the article, they talk about version 2.0, which die cast nearly all of an electric vehicle's complex underbody parts into a single unit. This does not mention that it is just the rear. And then even more confusion came from this later part in the article, which talks specifically actually about the rear underbody and not the whole underbody. But some people thought that this is about the whole underbody being cast. No, this is just the rear, but this is what the benefit is. The new approach allows the body system to save more than 10% in weight compared to traditional methods. At the same time, the technology offers significant cost advantages, as the cost of the rear floor assembly has been reduced by 40%, as the car was built using one-piece die casting. If you found this useful, you may want to subscribe right now. This took quite a lot of time going back and forth between all of the sources. The European Union launches a probe into China's EV subsidies targeting Tesla and European car makers. While the investigation initially targeted Chinese EV brands, Dombrovskis clarified that it could extend to cover other foreign producers if they are found to be benefiting from production side subsidies. This implies that the probe would include brands such as Tesla, which builds the Model 3 and Model Y cars at Shanghai, destined for some EU markets. I don't think Tesla is getting any additional subsidies from the Chinese government, but I'm not sure about these other EV brands in China. Troy has new DMV VIN data until September 25th. It shows that there was a 6-day production pause in the beginning of this quarter, and that production also was suspended on September 6th, and that Q3 production is likely less than 21,000 units. You can see all of this clearly from this chart. Yesterday, I reported that Volkswagen paused production for its 2 EV models, but I agree with Farzad here. Legacy automakers will claim EV demand is softening. Although this may be true due to interest rates and a high cost for what you get, their relative market share is being eaten up by Tesla, Rivian, and Chinese automakers. The market is there. They need to make good products. That's all they need to do. We are now starting to feel the impact of the strike. Auto suppliers urge Biden to provide federal financial assistance to address the strike. Elon Musk commented on the matter. He says they want a 40% pay raise and a 32-hour work week. Sure way to drive GM, Ford, and Chrysler bankrupt in the fast lane. Sawyer says, I believe that when Biden said UAW members should get a 40% raise, that he didn't fully understand the negative consequences this decision would have on GM, Ford, and Stellantis. If these automotive companies end up going bankrupt as a result, it could mean that no UAW member will have job security anymore. There are almost 400,000 UAW union members, which means if he doesn't support the union, he's at risk of losing hundreds of thousands of votes from the union.
The UAW, you saved the automobile industry back in 2008 and before. Made a lot of sacrifices, gave up a lot, and the companies were in trouble. But now they're doing incredibly well. It's about time for them to step up for us. Thank you.
Well, back in 2008, the president announced a $17.4 billion bailout to General Motors and Chrysler, of which $13.4 billion would be extended immediately. Without federal aid, GM and Chrysler warned they faced bankruptcy and the loss of 1 million jobs. So did the workers that were about to lose their jobs, did they save GM and Chrysler, or was it the taxpayer who saved GM and Chrysler? Wall Street Journal writes, does the Biden administration have it in for Elon Musk? The Tesla CEO faces a remarkable number of government probes. Elon says, sure, it seems that way. What's striking workers get wrong about automaker profits? A story from Yahoo. Any amount of profitability is meaningless unless compared with that of competitors. And next to other big automakers plus upstarts such as Tesla, the Detroit Three don't look nearly so rich. On profit margin, Tesla beats them all with a 15.4% margin in 2022, compared with 9.4% for Stellantis, 6.3% for GM, and minus 1.3% for Ford, which had a small loss in 2022. Here's some pretty interesting research about Ford and UAW. Ford's automotive business generated on average only $0.9 billion of free cash flow over the past 10 years, and the company's total revenue has been shrinking in real terms, along an average vehicle sales decline of nearly 5%. This implies that any expense increase of more than $15,000 per UAW worker would have netted Ford shareholders zero cash from the automotive business, which is in structural decline. And the workers want a 40% increase. So if you have a business that would stop making you money, why keep operating that business then? This UAW strike is really seemingly going to benefit Tesla by accelerating the collapse of Ford, GM, and Stellantis. Tesla has filed to build a $10 million cyber cafeteria at Giga Texas. Construction is expected to be completed by April of 2024. It will be 22,000 square feet, so it's going to be huge. This is great news for us Tesla stock investors. Ryan says, it's a funny story. My neighbor buys a Model X, receives the 3-month FSD trial. Suddenly, the trial ends. The neighbor is now complaining. Her life was much better with FSD. Autopilot is just not enough. And she is already planning to buy FSD outright in the coming year. I think over time we will start to hear more and more and more stories like this. I haven't really heard any stories like this until recently, but I saw another somewhat similar one yesterday. So it is becoming more common. In an EV sale Fiesta, Hyundai and Kia plan to cut prices on several electric vehicles amid an ongoing price war in Korea. The planned EV price cuts will run until the end of the year, which is exactly when they will turn into probably permanent price cuts. It is not just Tesla cutting prices. It's just that Tesla has the most real-time data, so therefore Tesla is the first one to cut prices. And remember this from Hyundai? Hyundai won't take a knee-jerk reaction to Tesla's price cuts, says the CEO, the European CEO. How is that turning out? Barron's test drove Tesla self-driving software for a month, and here's what they discovered. They are basically saying that FSD is great but not perfect. The question is, when will it be perfect or almost perfect? I saw a lot of news about this story. Hands off with the first true hands-free car in the US, and it's not Tesla, it's a Mercedes. But it's only designed to drive on a straight road with no curves, with a lead car to follow, and under 40 miles per hour. Although, supposedly you can only drive on highway, so yeah, you need to find a highway first where you can drive under 40 miles an hour. Oh, and also the weather has to be good, the road conditions have to be good, and it has to be in a well-mapped area. It also does not change lanes. And it, of course, uses LiDAR. So this is not a threat to Tesla at all. This is a $340,000 EV from Cadillac, and this is the frunk. For a moment, I thought maybe this is just a cover. But no, I think that's an actual frunk. It is almost as useful as a Tesla stock price target from Gordon Jones. Although I guess you could put something in there like a manual for the car or something like that that you sort of need to have in the car, but you want to save space and you never actually need to access it almost ever. Fisker has now built 5,000 Ocean electric SUVs. About 2,000 of those were built in the last 3 weeks. Production originally began in November of 2022. Rivian and Fisker stocks jump on optimistic EV delivery expectations. It jumped as much as 7% almost for a moment here. Honda's new electric sports car will debut next month, hinting at an NSX successor EV. Honda is late to the game, they better hurry up. Good news here, London City Council approved the zoning amendment in a 13-2 vote this afternoon, paving the way for Tesla to build their 50,000 square foot service center. More service centers means more Tesla sales, because if you don't have good service, the sales are not going to be as good. Rivian CEO says customers for Rivian's truck and Tesla Cybertruck won't overlap. Well, we will soon find out. The Cybertruck coming out soon is certainly not a good thing for Rivian. Alex has some good insight here. I think Optimus only uses energy to close its hand grip and grip things. The fingers spring open automatically when no power is consumed, so this motion makes perfect sense. Quite possible it also makes sense for the default state to be fully open, as gripping anything from that point requires only closure of grip to some degree. We have quite a few people saying that this car, the Tesla one, was on full self-driving, and there are some people complaining that when Tesla is on full self-driving, it acts like this, where it waits until the very end to actually enter the highway, which can be quite dangerous, as you can see here. And instead, it should try to get in the lane as soon and as quickly as possible. I haven't found any proof that shows that the car was on full self-driving, but it's certainly possible. Omar has an update about the newest FSD beta version. He says, wow, I did not expect this new version to be such a big improvement. You can feel it right away. Just drove around for 10 to 15 minutes and it did everything perfectly. Look at how smoothly it went around this stopped bus. 10 out of 10 Tesla team, 10 out of 10, and this is still version 11. Let's see how the Tesla car handled the situation from start to finish. So all of the cars are passing by. It's waiting for an opening. The car in the front starts moving, but it's not changing the lane. And then Tesla takes initiative and it just goes. Indeed, very smooth, very well done. And this was Omar's 13-minute drive with 0 interventions. This was his first drive on this new version. This is actually relevant to us Tesla stock investors. The chairman and the largest shareholder of Evergrande have just been detained by the Chinese government. Earlier today, the CEO and CFO of China's second largest property developer, Evergrande, who recently filed for bankruptcy, were also detained by the Chinese government. This was actually yesterday night, Eastern US time. China's economy does not seem to be doing exactly great, and that could slow Tesla sales down, and especially sales of Tesla's competitors. And China's real estate stock index just fell to its lowest level since 2011. Seemingly there was a recovery right here, but after that it was all downhill. Here's another piece of evidence that suggests that the Cybertruck is coming very soon. You can see these sensors there, and I believe these are for ground truth testing. In other words, to validate the information gathered by the vehicle's cameras with what is being seen by the LiDAR sensors. Although Tesla has only a 1.9% market share in terms of global vehicle sales, Tesla takes 6.8% of all cash. This means we are seeing a situation unfolding similar to that of the smartphone world, where one company, Apple, pockets most of the cash despite a strong but not crazy market share relative to its share of dollars spent in the industry. And yeah, this is looking pretty good for Tesla. Elon Musk just commented on this political story. He said, amazing. This is about Hunter Biden suing Rudy Giuliani over the laptop. Elon is getting more involved in politics. Elon spoke with a Texas representative and plans to visit Eagle Pass, Texas later this week to see the situation at the southern border. Many investors believe that Elon making political comments hurts Tesla, but Elon made it very clear that he will comment on whatever he wants to comment. A nonprofit company founded by Elon Musk, of which Elon has now lost control, is seeking a valuation of up to $90 billion in the sale of existing shares. So certainly, of course, definitely not for profit, right? Elon just commented on this story. This is an Apple store, and these are not Apple customers. These people just got in the store and they took everything they possibly could, and then they ran as fast as they could. The footage is quite graphic, so I'm not going to play it here. Due to things like that, Target is now closing 9 stores in major cities, citing violence and theft. We might see a few more Tesla stock investors from Europe going forward because, for example, ARK Invest just acquired this ETF, and maybe ARK Invest will be promoting itself, and therefore, as a result, indirectly Tesla stock a little bit more in Europe. This could be possibly relevant to Tesla. The Japanese Prime Minister said that new tax breaks will be offered for domestic investment in strategic areas such as batteries, electric cars, and semiconductors. I haven't really heard any rumors about Tesla building anything in Japan, but maybe if the government gives Tesla some big subsidies, maybe that could change. If you don't count the European Union as one single market, then Japan is the 3rd largest auto market in the whole world. There have been a lot of news stories recently about Tesla and privacy. Omar here says that Tesla data sharing screen popped up as soon as I installed the new update. So I don't see any issues with all of this. I think Tesla makes it pretty clear what they are doing. And the message is pretty clear and easy to understand. It's not some crazy legal talk that no regular person would ever understand. Elon yesterday met with the president of Hungary, and there's now some talk that possibly Tesla might build something in Hungary, maybe in Budapest, a factory. Alexandra said before that maybe Hungary possibly could make sense, but I haven't heard anything credible from anywhere so far that there are some real plans for doing anything like that in Hungary, at least as of right now. Maybe later, but not right now. If I hear anything, I will let you all know. An article from Forbes says, as it stands right now, Cybertruck doesn't appear to meet safety regulations for pedestrians and cyclists in the European Union and probably cannot be sold there in its current form. Well, I hate to point out the obvious, but Tesla will start selling the Cybertruck in the US first, and then they will eventually do it in Europe as well as in other markets. There are so many pre-orders for the Cybertruck in the US, and the US is the biggest pickup market in the world, so it makes sense to just focus on the US at first, and then we can add other markets.
And he had just become Times Person of the Year. He'd become the richest person on the planet. Tesla had made 1 million cars that year. It had become the most valuable car company after this hell production thing. He had launched that previous 6 months 33 rockets into orbit and landed them upright so he could reuse the rockets, something that still no company, not NASA, not Boeing, not anybody, or country, or Russia, or China can do. And I said, man, you know, and I'm thinking this is great for the book. It's ending on a high. And he says, I was not made for the calm. I sail into the storm. I've got to put my chips back on the table. And every single person close to him says the times he is most uncomfortable, when he's just unnerved, is when everything's going well. And the times that he is most energized is when all hell is breaking loose on all sorts of fronts. And Tallulah would say, I'd go at night, he would stay up when things were going really bad and the stress, and I'd have to hold his head as he vomited. And he would channel phrases that his father had once said to him. But then during the day, he was energized back in the fight. And so in that period, say early 2022, when things are going well, he can't leave well enough alone.
This is another big reason why I'm so invested in Tesla stock. It's because if everything goes well for Tesla, Tesla will do great. But if things go badly, which at some point inevitably they will go badly, just a matter of time really, Elon will be there, energized, working on the problem, and then eventually fixing and solving the problem successfully. Which is why, relatively speaking, my bear case in my Tesla valuation model is not really bad. Which is why I don't mind having my entire stock portfolio in Tesla stock. You can see my bear case and the entire valuation model on Patreon by clicking on the link down below.
He does not have a fingertip feel for human emotions. What are you thinking? And he said, well, Twitter, they have not improved the product. You can't do video. You can't do a payments platform. And it's an engineering problem. And I'm thinking, as I write in the book, it's not an engineering product. It's a advertising medium that gathers people with human emotions.
With Elon being in charge of X/Twitter, it has changed a lot. There's actually some good long-form content now on there. Whereas a year ago, good luck finding any good, valuable, long-form content on Twitter. It was mostly just short snippets of news or some outrageous talking points designed to make you feel outraged. And occasionally you would find a gem here and there if you're willing to sort through all of that craziness. But now I see a lot more longer form posts and longer form videos even, with a lot more nuance. I like that. I have some controversial thoughts about Tesla, and I think it's more appropriate to share these with a smaller audience, so I posted these thoughts in the newest Patreon video, which is exclusively available on Patreon. By joining my Patreon, you will get access to how much I think it is fair to pay per Tesla share each year between 2023 2033 and 2033. If you sign up for the investor tier of support, you will also get my valuation model of Tesla stock with a 45-minute video walkthrough. And YouTube says you should watch this video next, but if you haven't finished watching that discussion about the future where Elon Musk participates, watch this one first. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Matt Fosius.